Hey everybody, this is Vito Skarnecki with Ask Me Anything. Thanks for tuning in again. This is week, 789 of the pandemic shelter in place. So thanks for tuning in. Today we have Patrick McAndrew of SGC Financial with us. And today we're going to talk about all sorts of stuff concerning you and your financial future. Patrick, welcome aboard. Patrick, welcome aboard.
Thanks, Vito. Thanks for having me, man.
Oh man, it's an honor. And thanks for teaching me how to do this backdrop. I feel like I'm in Hawaii now.
Yeah, I was on a call and I seen they were like on the Death Star. I was like, how did you do that?
Maybe we should do that. I saw one with there you go.
There you go.
See that?
Yep.
I'm from
There's a
outer
Golden
space.
Gate one, I think. You can download like whatever. So
Hey, it's pretty cool. Yeah, I was on a meeting earlier today for a virtual tour thing for all the houses that are on for sale, and one person had the background going. I'm like, oh yeah, I have to go look into that. So yeah. So Patrick, tell me about yourself. Tell me about everything, your background, what you do, your hobbies.
Well, clearly, as you can tell with my background, I like long walks on the beach. So I had to get that in there somehow.
I'm gonna switch this every couple of minutes just because it's fun.
Yeah, well, people will think they're listening to a different conversation every time. No.
Yeah, and how long have you?
Yeah.
How long have you been in financial advising? Is that what we say?
Since 2003-ish, 2003, 4, something like that. Yeah. So it's been a while. It's been about 16, 17 years.
That's about how long.
I say off and on only because I'm going into my 24th year as an Army reservist, and so after 9/11, in 2001, of course, things got a little busy. So I was overseas every few years or so. So I got some time overseas, which would interrupt the career, as you might imagine.
Sure. My time was Desert Storm, so that was well before 9/11, and my wife was in the hospital with my twins because they were mono twins, and I don't want to go into that, but she had to be in the hospital. They were safe and everything. And I saw my former CO. He's like, Vito, I want you to come along with me. I'm going to Afghanistan. I'm like, and I had my 3 or 2-year-old boy there, right? I'm like, that sounds like it's such a great opportunity. But I had a 2-year-old in hand and twins in my wife's belly in the hospital. And if I said, hey, I'll be back in a couple months. Yeah. I wouldn't be in this house right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that was it. So I did 12 and a half years.
Right on.
Yeah. But
That's awesome.
What's your rank now? You're E8?
E7, Sergeant First Class. Yeah, I should be getting my E8 here pretty soon. I've been, being a reservist, having to balance professional career as a civilian and military. So it's just been challenging for me to schedule the time to knock out some of the schooling that's involved in getting promoted. But finally was able to do that. So
I remember that. So are you allowed to tell us what you do?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So in the Army, it's a psychological operations is what it's called.
Wow.
That's what the branch is called, if you will. It sounds really cool, and it can be, frankly, a few percentage points at a time. Most of the time, no, it's not. But it's a very interesting field, full of a lot of very, very smart soldiers who do incredible things to support the mission and the nation. And I've been lucky enough to work with many of them. And I'd say it's mostly it's rooted in I'd say the grandfather of it all is military deception. If you think back to World War II, I think the most famous example of like the rubber tanks.
That's right. Churchill put those up. Patton did that. Right. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. To have the Nazis think something else was going on for the invasion. So yeah, it's a form of military deception. So that's probably where it stemmed from.
Yeah.
I suppose. But now it does a lot of things. It's basically using information to help win a battle or influence a population or target audience.
Is it the same thing in Hollywood where Starship Troopers, where Doogie Howser's character touched that worm thing, and same thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. But a big part of it though is just learning how people think and building relationships. Frankly, that's a big part of it too. It's just trying to understand what motivates people and what kind of actions one can take in order to change a behavior.
Right.
And a lot of that crosses over to what I do here and what you do too as well. Just figuring out what works what best for somebody so that they are likely to pursue a behavior that's beneficial. Finding out what's the best solution that long term provides a good result for them. It's good to get somebody to a solution that doesn't work for them, that doesn't match their behavior, match their values, doesn't work out long term.
That's absolutely true. And that's kind of, it's the same thing with a lot of these service professions, insurance, etc. We all have to figure out what the long-term goal is for everybody to help them out throughout that. And, today we're talking about what happens after a probate or a trust gets settled out. That's really when we bring you into the fold. And, a lot of my clients, they go through this process and they're like, oh, I have this landslide of cash. I don't know what to do with it. Let's go to Vegas. Right. And, that's always fun to have a little trip or maybe go to Hawaii or what have you. But then when you think about it, you have the ability to take that money and not really set them up for life, but what is it called? It's called preserving generational wealth, right?
Yeah, that's a challenge for sure. I think, money is so interesting in that it has such a deeply rooted relationship with oneself and within a family, right? Speaking of generational wealth, like that relationship, I know my relationship with money started at a very, very young age before I'm actually really conscious of it, right? It's just involves so much of our life. It decides the kind of street we live on, decides the kind of healthcare we get, decides the kind of school I go to, decides what kind of food is on my table as a 4-year-old, right? It's just money's all around us and there's energy attracted to that. And so growing up and to deal with adults now who learn or created a relationship with money as toddlers and come into a inheritance or a big windfall of money, it can lead to a lot of challenges for sure. A lot of challenges. I think everybody's probably familiar with the story of the lotto winner who goes broke. Well, they're almost destined to in some ways because they have a strange relationship or a different relationship with money that without support is going to play out.
Yeah. It's the same thing with all the NFL players, all the professional sports players. They just take the money and get them to buy their $500,000, fast cars and their big mansions, and they bring in their people and they live a fast life. And then when they get hurt, they don't have anything to fall back on, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's a lot of stories like that.
Yeah, and it happens every day.
I think that they're trying to get smarter about that. I think there's a lot more education out there and knowledge and awareness about that issue, right? It just takes sustained effort, though, because that relationship starts so young. You have so many years of experience of being that way with your money. To suddenly change, it takes a lot of effort. I think that's one of the values of having an advisor, really, is the behavioral support around decision making and making the right choices. Very much like going to a gym and having the difference between working out on your own versus working out, with a coach or a trainer. The results will be very much, very different.
Right. Right. So hang on a second. There too. Sorry, my dog required my presence there for a second to let her into my bedroom. So I'm actually in my bedroom. My wife is working downstairs in my office, the one I usually work in, because the kids were home, and and she asked if I wanted my office today, but either it doesn't really matter, especially with a cool background like this. And I have the fan going over here with the breeze. So it's all good. It's all good.
I know I'm working on my tan. It's not quite come through yet, but
yeah. So
tell me, I had a question for you. So how did this become something that you got involved in?
Oh yeah, my backstory is pretty intricate. My wife's grandfather and my wife's mother died within 7 days of each other, and the grandfather had a trust, and he was completely set up. He was obviously, he knew he was going downwards, and he had a plan completely set up. And last week I just had a 2.5-hour conversation with a lawyer who does estate planning, and Percy, the grandfather, really took care to have instructions on how to handle everything, from the real estate to the property to cash to this to everything. And he had everything completely written out. And my in-laws, they didn't. My mother-in-law died at like 58, 59 with early onset Alzheimer's and dementia, and they just, we didn't talk about it. Matter of fact, when I was first getting together with Jill, we put together a trust because we bought a house, and we're like, okay, we have to have a trust. And I started to talk to them about it, and the mother-in-law started yelling at me. And little did I know, it wasn't because she was angry with me. It was the dementia, and she, it was the disease taking over at that time. But they didn't have instructions. They didn't have a trust. It was just a financial ruin. And because she was so young, they didn't have a lot of tools to understand how to ask for help and go to Medi-Cal or Medicare and work with the state to get that kind of help. And to this day, it took me 7 years after they passed to find the right lawyer to ask me the right questions, because I was trying to figure out how to get this done for my family, because what happens if I go off the deep end and I get Alzheimer's and what have you? I want my family to be taken care of, but I also want to have instructions to take care of me as well as my estate and my family when I pass. So, generationally, 95% of us don't talk about money. We don't talk about death. We don't talk about what happens when. And I think that's really what this conversation is all about, is have those conversations with your kids. Or if you have elder parents, how do you have those conversations without ticking them off or setting them off or triggering them? And that's really where I am at with this. So with the financial advisor part, when people come to me and say, Vito, my dad or my uncle just died and he didn't have a trust, has to go through something called probate, which is this long, painful, very expensive way that the state handles getting rid of your estate or resolving your estate. And by that, I'm talking 7 to 12 months of going back and forth with the courts. If you have $1 million in your state, just the cost of a lawyer is about $23,000 just to settle that out. That's just the basics. And if you have a trust, you have this set up so that there's tax advantages to it. You have the instructions set up. It's very easy. But Patrick, did you know that only 5% of property owners have their homes held in a trust?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm aware of that. Only because, well, for two reasons. One, went through that exact scenario with my grandmother's home,
Right.
probably about 15 years ago, something like that, 12 years ago. Exactly what you described, that it was not in a trust, the house was paid off, and I had to go to the probate course, which I never even heard of as a 26-year-old.
Exactly.
This happened. And So got an education for sure. And like you mentioned, the fees were scheduled, so it wasn't like it got out of control. But it was still a simple, it couldn't have been a more simple estate outside of just a home. And it was still like $17,000, $18,000 in 6 months of just waiting. And then meeting with clients, I'd say over the last 10 years or so, as education around it has gotten a little better. I think some people are more aware of some of these things, but doesn't mean to take an action. I've seen some more people have them, but mostly when I meet with the client the first time, they do not have they don't have that set up, especially for the property. They should.
And it's more like my evangelical duty, or I have to go out there and talk about it. It sucks that I have to bring my parents, my in-laws, and my my past grandpa into this and talk about it, but it's a personal thing because I saw what my family had to go through, and I saw the pain and anguish just to settle things out, and it was just so painful that when somebody passes, like let's say that I died right away, and my kids who are still teenagers, they have to go through the emotional turmoil of losing their father, and that's such a huge part of it. But there's the financial and legal and everything else that has to go around. Like, where's all my doodads and my instructions on how I want to be buried? And people just don't have that. And that's, I think it's important that we start talking about it as a whole, as a culture, because there's two things that are certain in this world. It's death and taxes, right? And there's ways to get around, not abuse the tax system, but use this tax system. There's nothing you can do to get out of that, the last one, or the first one, death, right? We're all not getting out of here alive. So,
yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So you've had, I think last week we talked, you said you had somebody come to you last week or a couple of weeks ago that came into the situation where they have a landfall, or what do you call a waterfall of
windfall?
What's that?
Like a windfall of money?
A windfall of cash. What happened? What kind of a scenario do you play out for that? I mean, I know you're not going to go, you need to go buy the hottest stock, penny stocks, and right? So go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good question. It really varies by the situation. And none of this should be construed as financial advice by any means.
Because everybody has a different scenario, right?
Yeah, it's very different for everybody.
Right.
And so getting in relationship with that client to first understand, what's going on, what they want that money to represent, what they believe the wishes of the person that left it for them wants to have happen with that, and what else is going on besides this money financially for them, right? Because it's all kind of tied together, and it's kind of like you need kind of a cooling off period a little bit too before this big, any kind of big purchases or big investments are made there. So nothing happens right away, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
The intention is to, you said it earlier, you found a lawyer who finally asked you the right questions, right? And that's really it. Creating an experience over 2, 3, 4, meetings where you're asked the right questions that will reveal exactly what somebody wants.
Right.
And then linking what they want with that money that they've now come into, and how to make that happen, right? And it's usually that first conversation where people reveal what it is they want to see happen usually isn't the same by the time that last conversation happens. And that a lot more discoveries happen. We get more into, for one, more trust is built, right? So they can feel more at ease to be able to say what it is that's on their mind. Some of the unpacking from the grief has already happened, and just speak more clearly about what it is that they want to see happen. And it gives me an opportunity as an advisor to be able to assess what's the financial literacy, not only for him or her, but in the family. What was it like for this person financially growing up? What was it like for their parents? Because a lot of that can tell a good advisor, okay, how does this person respond to stress, especially financial stress? Because that's going to impact how we recommend somebody allocates their investments or their financial assets, if you will. So it's a lot. It's unpacked. And it basically comes down to just knowing the person who you're sitting with, getting a full understanding of, what's their wants, what's their desires, what's troubling them, what's the opportunities they have now, and really understanding the geography, if you will, around their life financially. And it takes several meetings. It's not a simple thing of just sitting down, picking an investment to put the money in. So that's the simple part, really.
So if I called you and I said, hey, I have $5,000, what's the hot stock tip of the day?
Jeez, I'd be the last person you should call for that. Yeah, I'd be the last person. That's a good question though, because I think there's a lot of in the service industry, especially financial services, whether you're a real estate agent, financial advisor, a life insurance agent, a mortgage, there's the titles go on, right? And there's a lot of perceptions and a lot of myths really out there about what each of those roles do and what they can't do. I think industry as a whole kind of sucks at really explaining what people do and how they get compensated and what the rules are. I think it's just a lot of murkiness out there, right?
Yep.
I think I can say about that as a financial advisor, because a lot of people have that title, and it can imply a lot, and it ain't always true that because they call themselves a financial advisor that they're fully capable of being.
I always say that because real estate, in fact, has a very low barrier to entry, which means that it's very easy to get your license. You have three classes, take a test, you basically skid by on a C average, and when you take your test and you have your license, it doesn't mean you're capable of taking care of $1 million transaction or those people and understanding what their needs are. And it goes a whole lot more than just having that license.
Exactly.
Right. So with that, what are some of the things that if I didn't know you, what were some of the smart questions I should ask if I'm calling a financial advisor, if I'm interviewing them?
Yeah, that's a good question, and tied into the topic of what you brought, what we started this with. Somebody, a death happens in a family, and in that trust, assets are allocated a certain way to be passed on for that generational wealth, right? And in an ideal situation, there's already an advisor involved, right? So they already understand what needs to have happen because they've been part of the conversation when they first set up the trust. They already know the family. That'd be ideal, but let's say that's not the case. And now we're forced to go find somebody. The person you probably wouldn't want to call would be somebody who can answer that question of, I got $5,000, give me a hot stock, right? Not that there's no value in that, but that's somebody who's day trading or is holding themselves out as some kind of stock picker of some sort. It's a very different strategy as opposed to somebody like myself or other professionals in the industry who, as a fiduciary financial advisor, is looking at it from a planning point of view and wants to see the entire portfolio of somebody's financial life, from all their insurance coverages to all their investments to their benefits at work, all their liabilities, and building a plan from there. So very different, lanes to be working in. But to further answer your question of things somebody should ask, a family should ask when they sit down or they start asking questions to an advisor that they're interviewing, either by phone or in person, is what their qualifications are, what licenses do they hold. A life insurance agent, for example, can do amazing things, right? Experts in their field. However, to say that would be the right selection, for example, in a situation where somebody comes in with a windfall of money as a result of the death in the family, may not be the right person to speak with. Now, that could be part of the answer, but that probably should be the first place you should go sit with. There's a lot of folks out there who are financial advisors and hold licenses who aren't fiduciaries, aren't financial planners. Not saying that they can't do great work. I'm sure they can, and I know they can. But I'd say the place you'd be best served would be with somebody who is a fiduciary financial advisor who can work for a fee. Basically, taking commissions off the table and can do a plan for a flat fee and give you sound advice from that point of view. I think that's probably the best place to work from. So you want to ask that: can you work for a fee?
So you mentioned fiduciary quite a few times, and when I sell a house, I am in fact a fiduciary. I have fiduciary duty to protect my seller, and in California, as many states are, you're allowed to represent the buyer as well, and that, in my opinion, is a conflict of interest, because I might slip some information out to the buyer and my seller might not really want to have that happen, or I might be able to lower the price just to get the deal done, and that gets a little sneaky, so I tend not to do that. What are some of the things that what is a fiduciary in your industry?
Yeah, so basically, fiduciary is somebody who can work for as a fee-based advisor who they're not in a situation where it could be a conflict of interest because they are working based on commissions. Again, there's nothing wrong with somebody who just works on commissions. They can do incredible work. They can. But a fiduciary can take commissions off the table. There we go. A fiduciary can take commissions off the table and just work from a completely unbiased and no conflict of interest, right? Otherwise, somebody who's not a fiduciary as a financial advisor is probably just working from commissions, and they're not required to get you the best possible solution for your situation. So, for example, you have two investments, just to keep it simple. One pays an advisor higher commissions as opposed to the other. Outside of that, there's no other value difference. Well, obviously, you need the best interest of the client to get the lower commissionable solution, right? Somebody who's not a fiduciary does not have to offer that. They can offer the higher commissionable product, and there's no issue there, right? Fiduciary, though, would have to offer or should offer the less expensive solution.
Or at least educate them on what the differences are and understand that you're going to get a little bit more value in the front end on the one without the commission.
Right. That's the difference. If there's value for it, then no problem. But if there's no difference, just besides one just is more expensive, okay, because it pays the advisor better. And that's to say, not saying that all those advisors out there working from commissions strictly do that. There's plenty of do amazing work, right? So I'm not saying that either, but by and large, I would recommend you work with fiduciary. So it just takes the commissions, because as human beings, there's a bias there, and just get that off the table.
All right.
Fiduciary point of view, and fee-based would be the way to go. Another good question, is what's their primary client profile? What kind of people they like to work with? Make sure that there's a good match there, right? A good advisor is somebody that you're probably going to be working with for many, many, many years. So it's got to have a good fit. Personality's got to match up, and we got to make sure that if they mostly work with high-paid lawyers and you're not a high-paid lawyer, I don't know how great of a fit it might be for that advisor. That advisor might be for you. A good advisor would tell you too, hey, you're not a good fit for me. However, I know somebody who would be.
Sure.
So that'd be important too. What kind of team they have? What kind of staff they have around them? Are they just by themselves? That could be possibly a red flag. Nowadays things are just so much more complicated, and your generalist who works by himself is not something you come across too often anymore, because of just how sophisticated products have become, the technology involved now. And so your generalist who doesn't have an area that they're more focused on, who works on their own, not something that you see too much in the financial advising industry that often anymore.
It's very true. I've been in real estate for 17 years, and for the last 15, I was an independent broker, and I pretty much took care of everything myself because I was a very proud DIY kind of guy. As a matter of fact, I do everything around my house by myself, except for certain things, like I won't go underneath the house because I'm claustrophobic and I hate that. Like this last couple 3 weeks, we built the chicken coop. I made sure my daughters did most of the work, but you know, I made sure I was there.
That's cool.
When I ran my brokerage, one time before 2007, 2008, I had 12 agents working for me. We were doing loans and real estate. I had 2 offices and everything was great. And then a lot of stuff happened, and 2008 happened, and I got rid of all my agents. I was a lone wolf for a very long time. And just recently I've been realizing that, you know, what my service is it was lacking in a lot of different things. And that's not necessarily on the service side, but on the support side. So just recently I moved over to Coldwell Banker, mainly because the technology that they have to offer, the support that they have, the office staff that's there to make sure that my clients get the right service, that everything is backed up, and legally as well as contractually, as well as making sure that they get the best deal for whether they're selling or buying. And the marketing side, it's just amazing what Coldwell Banker has to do. And I interviewed a whole lot of different companies out there, and everybody would, you know, for years I looked at Coldwell Banker because they're, you know, 100-year-old company. It's like, what? I have nothing. I don't want anything to do with the old company. But the further I looked into it, there's companies out there that are brand spanking new, venture capitalist companies that have millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, that are touting the fact that they're a technology company that just happened to do real estate. Well, I looked at what they were offering versus what Coldwell Banker has to offer, and Coldwell Banker trumps them. I hate to use that term, but it's just amazing at the technology and services that they can back up compared to, you know, the younger services. So I totally agree with you. Going to an independent or smaller company, there's a reason why I did this. And it took me a long time to come to grips with it. And it's mostly ego. But you know, I've known SJC Financial for a very long time, and I know that the backing is there, and it's just a very smartly run company that, So
that's a big part. People should definitely look into that. The SGC has been around for, gosh, they go back to the 40s here in the neighborhood, I believe. And you know, our broker dealer that supports us, Securian, they've been around for even longer. And to your point, just having that reach back capability, right? I think of it more like in Army terms, right? Having, you know, if I'm out on mission, knowing that I have huge assets for reach back to support me in conquering the objective, it makes all the difference. Because so much is changing too. There's a lot of rules and regulations that have been changing in the financial industry from year to year, and being able to stay all on top of that on your own, man, that's tough. That's tough. So we've got an awesome staff, incredible culture that really supports with all that.
Yeah, and you know, it's just in my mind, it was more because I was an independent broker. I got to keep all the commissions, less the marketing and all the other, you know, there's a cost of doing business. And now I'm having to deal with my split or a cut of my commission that goes towards Coldwell Banker. But I'm telling you, it's just to lean back and see them go to work and do the things that spend all my time doing that versus when I could be out creating video or being in touch with my clients or networking or what have you, doing what a good agent should do. It's amazing. And
ultimately, the client wins there too. When you think about it, because speaking for myself, since I don't have all those other things I have to deal with, I can focus on what's in front of me. That's
right.
The family that I'm serving. So.
And you know, it's like, oh, well, you just run a real estate company. Well, yeah, you run a real estate company, but you have to run a business, and there's a lot that goes behind it.
Yeah.
The legal part, the forms, keeping up with new forms, like COVID. There's 15 new forms that we have to use for COVID or coronavirus now, because if you're going to go into a property, you have to be aware of the risks, right? And because we're a litigious state, and we have to make sure that's all covered. So,
Yeah.
So, do you, this is off topic, or going back into what your services are, do you handle REITs? Do you manage REITs, or do you advise on REITs?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, a financial planner, a fiduciary financial planner, especially the ones here at SGC, like myself, don't focus on tactics, if you will. It's more about the strategy, right? So what's the overall plan? Getting into individual asset selection or individual asset recommendations, that's more challenging. I'd say that's more of a specialist right there. If somebody's looking to specialize in investing in real estate-backed securities, which is what a REIT is, they should be looking for somebody that's what they do. I don't know of any. I'm not saying they don't exist. They probably is, but a financial planner who works from a plan that looks at everything, who also specializes in REITs, that's not something I've heard of, but perhaps it exists.
Okay.
I'd say if somebody wanted to do that, what they would do is find a financial planner, put the plan together, and then there's a section in there that calls for that based on their goals. They find the recommendation plan would be now let's select a specialist in that lane.
Right. It's just like if you're a real estate investor, like I am, I go out and buy real estate in different states. I don't expect my real estate agents who are telling me about these properties to know everything about the property. I expect them to answer the questions that I'm asking them, because at the end of the day, I'm doing the heavy lifting. I'm the investor. I have the questions of the experience that I need to know in order to find out if it's a decent investment or not, right? So, it's the same thing with you too. You wouldn't necessarily need to know everything about that. Or do you do life?
Yeah, we do. That's something we look at too, for sure. And as you were talking, it made me think of often when I meet somebody, it's not unheard of where somebody would ask questions like that, about specific types of investments. And not that that's a red flag for me, but it's also, okay, I need to educate the client about, what it is, what our role is in that, working with an advisor like myself or planner. We're not going to be our conversations for the first probably 6 months will have nothing to do with an individual type of investment, unless there's a really pressing issue with something that they're holding, right, that needs to be figured out, because there's a time thing or something. That might change that. Otherwise, we're taking a very 30,000 foot point of view and figuring out what the pieces need to look like, and then what needs to come together to appear. And so when folks will usually start with those kind of questions, though, I was looking at this stock, wanting to know if I should put money into that. Well, first, how about we start with where you want to go? Like, what's the goal?
Put a nickel on the yo.
Yeah, exactly. Let's figure out, what's the goal first, and then we'll figure out how to get there. Right. So, yeah, we're much more diversified, long-term strategic planning as opposed to that's one side of the spectrum, right? The other side of the spectrum would be day trading. What's the right stock right now that I can sell pretty soon to make some money now?
That's funny, because it was perfect, because my next question is, and you don't have to answer this because I know it's more of a crystal ball question. Is it a good time to invest?
Well, it's like, it's a good time to save money. The best time to save money was yesterday, right? The next best time was today. So, yeah, right. And it always depends on the goal, I'd say if you're 20-something or 30-something or 40-something, investing today looks differently, especially in this, climate, as opposed to somebody who's 50, 60, and 70.
Right.
Depending on the goal. Yeah, it all depends.
Right.
I get asked that question. Some people feel like I'm copying out to the answer. Like, it's just, I don't know you well enough. I'm not talking about you, but the person who would ask me to be able to give you the good answer. Like, I don't know what it is that you want to do.
Because they want you to give you the crystal ball question.
Yeah.
What are the lottery ticket numbers or lottery numbers that are going the $300 million landfall? No, I don't. Is the market going to crash tomorrow?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm telling all my buyers it's a good time to buy because there's less competition. There's less buyers out on the market right now by 2/3. I just got into contract 2 days ago and they had 2 offers on this house, and it was less than 1,000 square foot house. So yeah, there are buyers out there, and people are still buying, and investors are still buying, but it's still speculation. The market could fall out tomorrow. It could be 9 months from now, and the market could completely crash. We don't know.
Just so I can understand better too, you're looking more at, or you're specializing more in this space of people who have a trust and there's real estate involved, or tell me how that looks for you, like ongoing. Like what is that?
Well, because of that whole story of what happened with my in-laws, and my wife's grandfather, I started learning more about, and this happened years ago, 7, 8, 9 years ago. Started taking on more information about it and teaching myself about the differences between probate and trusts. And, you know, most of what I'm doing is educational. But what happens is, typically, because people talk to me and they see that I'm very well educated and understanding of what goes on between a trust and a probate, or vice versa, or what the differences are, my services include real estate, but it's not just real estate. It's bringing in financial advisors and coordinating with lawyers and helping to remove personal property from the estate, or from that property, helping to sell it off or auction it off or give it away or clean it out completely, get the house ready to sell if they have a house to sell, or if they want to move in, then we can manage repairs for them as well. And that's another thing that we do as part of our strength, is that I have a long list of contractors, landscapers, plumbers, you name it, as well as a project manager that helps coordinate that for me as a service. And then on top of that, you know, I work with grief counselors, social services, a lot of different people from all different necks of the world, because again, when you come into a situation where a loved one has passed and you have all this stuff that you have to deal with, you have 1,001 questions and don't know what the questions are and who to ask. We want to be that central hub for you. And we do that successfully and help people go from, you know, where they are right now, just to settle out. And it's completely different than what you're doing. I have this windfall of cash. What do I want to do with it? How do I make it so that I can live comfortably? I come from a part of, you know, empathy and understanding where you're at right now, because I've been there, and what to do and what questions you have to ask, and what happens if I forget to do this. And, you know, like in Santa Clara County, it takes 9 to 12 months to settle out a probate estate. Yeah. You know, there's different lawyers that know how to work the system and how to go to different places and get that settled out a little bit quicker. And it's because I've asked the right questions with the right professionals. And yeah, I've been burnt before, because I'm human. I trusted people, and I've been screwed over, because it's just human nature sometimes to deal with the wrong people. But you know what? You learn from it, and no transaction in the world is ever going to be perfect. But the thing is I have this checklist and this long list of professionals that we've been working with for the last 6 and 7 years, and it continues to grow and it continues to get better every time we do help another family get through the whole process. And that's really what we do.
That's awesome. There are some strong similarities between, you know, what you do and I do. I think what's different though is, you know, obviously what the client, you know, it starts with the real estate focus, right? But it involves so much more, right?
Yeah, we actually have a service where if you don't have property and you still need the service, we offer that. Typically, if you have property in it, there's no fee that we charge. We do charge a fee if you don't have property and you need the help. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Right on. And what you're describing is a process, really. That's what I'm hearing. Like, you're guiding people through a process so that they can get, you know, a very challenging situation figured out with the best result possible, right? Without missing anything.
Yeah, you know, the thing is you have your family, your life, your work, and you have your grief that you have to go through as well. And, you know, I'd hate to say it because it's more of a happy thing, but a wedding planner has the same same function as what we do, just
Yeah.
more in depth. And it's, you know, it sucks that we have to do that, but it just became something that I became passionate about because I want to help people get through this process. And it's satisfying to me because just the other day, I got one of my clients sent me a wine basket to thank me. And I was like, what's this for? And it's because I answered a couple simple questions, right? And I felt so good and so amazed that somebody cared enough to send me a little thank you basket. That was just really meant a lot to me. And that's the feeling that I get that I like to do. That's the reason why I do this, is because it's a hard thing to get through, and understanding the pain and the emotion and watching people just break down, and then I pick up the pieces for them.
Yeah,
right?
That's awesome, man. That's invaluable too, to have somebody in the community who has done the vetting and built the bench necessary to guide somebody through that process. I mean, that's huge. That's huge. Because to do that on your own is, you know, it takes forever, and it's expensive, and it's draining on top of, like you said, everything that's already going on. That's why so much of these things end up taking so much longer, right, for some folks, because it's just stretched out over a longer time because it's just so painful to deal with.
Imagine working 10, 12 hours because your company's forcing you to meet a deadline. You come home exhausted, and you see this big pile of bills and paperwork and everything that has to get dealt with. You're like, tomorrow. And versus you give it to us, and I don't touch the money. I have an accountant that actually does it for us, and they manage everything. And if let's say that there's situations where an estate has zero available cash, they're not liquid whatsoever, we have ways to get assets or funds for them so that they can help settle it out and attach it to the property. So it's almost like a loan, right? But we have that asset to be able to offer these people, because it happens a lot. It happens where, you know, Uncle Jimmy has his property and all this other stuff, and he has, you know, $10,000 worth of bills that we have to pay off. And how do we take care of it? Well, we set them up with an escrow account, and my accountant takes care of paying off the creditors monthly until the property's sold off. And that could be 9, 10, 12 months, right?
Yeah.
So we make sure that gets handled so that nothing comes up into a whirlwind of foreclosures and collectors and all this other stuff that happens, because people are exhausted at the end of the day. Yeah. And that's what, you know, and it's just something that we did. Yeah. It's funny because it's not a very well-known thing. Mm-hmm.
Until it's too late for folks.
Right. And we do it for trustees as well as probate. Again, it's about settling out the estate and helping guide and giving options and educating who to talk to and understanding what the costs are, because everybody's going to have their hand out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing in real estate. Or, you know, when you go to sell a house, you have county, city, you have escrow, title, you have all these other fees that you have to pay, and that's just part of life.
It's exhausting mentally, for sure. I mean, I think that, or I know that's one of the most rewarding parts about my career, is seeing the level of anxiety or an apprehension, if you will, that's kind of running in the back of somebody's mind over, you know, will I be able to retire? Will I be able to afford college for my son and or daughter? You know, all these basic questions. Will I be able to sell this home for what I think it'll be worth to fund my retirement? Like all these questions that come up just in dealing with our own personal finances in everyday life, and being able to provide a solution there, right? Mm-hmm. And just to be able to map it out, it can allow somebody to be freed up to focus on whatever it is they want to focus on, right? Without having that worry in the back of their mind. And that's just exaggerated like 1,000 times when it comes to this huge life event, like, you know, a property that's going to have to go to probate, or, you know, a trust with real estate in it. And somebody had to become a trustee. And so being able to have somebody to guide you through that so that you can, like you said, focus on the grieving process and being with the family, as opposed to being with the paperwork, is huge, huge. So let me ask you, so if somebody finds themselves in a situation like, man, I just, dad's just passed away, or grandpa's passed away, or grandma just passed away, whoever this loved one is, or is sick, right? Like and something's coming up. I guess everything's through Zoom right now. What, they just call you, kind of do a introduction, just kind of see if it's a good fit, or like, how does that work? What's
yeah,
that
absolutely. The first thing I'm going to ask you is if you have a trust involved for that person and that person's estate. And if not, that's the first step we're going to do. The second thing is if they're still alive. If not, if they've passed on, then making sure that we keep everything safe and secure. We get special insurance on the property in case it burns down, because a vacant property isn't typically insured anymore. And we make the house look like somebody's still living there. And the reason why we want to do that is to make sure that, people that might have other intentions in life don't happen upon it and go, oh, that house is vacant, I wonder what I can go in and take. So we do a lot of things to secure the property and make sure that that's happened. And then after that, we take care of introducing you to the next step in the entire process. But again, you're in this thing like a fog of war, right? The minute the first bullet shot, you're like in a fog of, oh my God, what do I have to do? So I'm going to rattle off everything that needs to happen. I don't expect you to know that. I'll go, okay, this is the step that we're taking care of. This is what we just finished. These are the next 2 or 3 steps that's happening. So every time I talk to you, you know what's going on. And we just do it as a process until we get through it.
Awesome. Got it. Right on, man. That's awesome. That's awesome.
So Patrick McAndrew, do you have any events that are coming up? Any webinars or training or anything where, like, let's say they want to ask you some information, how can we get a hold of you?
Well, we were going to be filling Levi Stadium with a yeah, right, but because of the situation right now, we won't be filling that stadium after all. No, that's a great question. So SGC does a lot of stuff here in the community, and a couple of the advisors here, or a few of them actually, teach courses on financial literacy and getting ready for retirement at multiple locations here in the Bay Area. And so anybody comes to the website, sgc-financial.com, they can see whether some of those courses are set and taught. I myself, I'm not currently doing any of those courses right now. Most of my attention is with people who are small business owners or self-employed, and help them navigate through what is a challenging time and figuring out solutions for the future for their business and for their families. So the short version is, I myself, I'm not doing any of those classes, but the firm is doing plenty of those by webinar and Zoom. That's still something that they're doing.
Very cool. And they can just go to SGC Financial, and when they log in to sign up for the class, do they say Patrick McAndrew sent me, or how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if anybody can just email me, and I can support them into looking into any of those courses. Of course, patrick.mcandrew@sgcfinancial.com.
I have that down on the within the comments down below. Cool. If it's YouTube or wherever you find it, you'll be able to find that information. Be able to get a hold of you. And you have an office line, or do your cell phone okay?
Yeah, the office line works best, 650-227-0394. And for us, when we meet with somebody, there is no fee just to get together and figure out if it's a good fit. Just kind of find out where you're at, what you're looking for. And worst case, people usually, I'd say 10 times out of 10, maybe I could be wrong about one point, I can't remember one, where I've met with somebody where we don't move forward, but they feel good about what they learned and there was value created, and it just wasn't the right fit.
That's awesome. Hey, so I'm going to let you go here in a second, but there's another thing. You mentioned small businesses, and you work with small businesses. So we have another call to do next week. I want to ask you a bunch of questions about that. All right.
Right on, man.
All right. Well, Patrick, thank you so very much for spending the last hour. It's been a full hour. Oh my goodness.
Oh wow!
It didn't even feel like that, right? It was awesome. It was a good time.
Oh.
A lot of good time. Couple of jokes, some fun with the backgrounds.
We're gonna change our backgrounds for next time.
Yeah,
hey, great to hear about what you're focused on, Vito. That's an awesome service. I'm trying to think about the situation of my own family back in 2005 or 6, whatever that was, and how valuable that would have been, and clients that I have that have things like that have happened in their past.
Yeah,
it's huge.
It's such a great opportunity for me to be able to help people, and it's just so relieving for those people to go on with their lives and deal with their grief, right? And that's the big thing. So
yeah.
All right, Pat, we'll talk to you next week. Thank you again for spending so much time with me on this call. This has been fun and enjoyable and very educational and entertaining.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right, this is Vito Scarnecchia with Abitano Group. We'll see you out there.
See ya.
Do me a favor real quick, take 2 seconds and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Also hit the like, the little thumbs up, and the little bell so you'll be notified of upcoming videos.